MrBeast is the greatest kind of content creator, and he approached us to really want to play one of his favorite video games against one of his direct competitors. And we held that in Vegas during Prime Day. And then ultimately, all the winnings on whichever team won, which ended up being MrBeast, went to his nonprofit charity of choice. So that was a viral moment for us because that was live streaming on Twitch.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Social Media for Social Impact, the podcast where we explore how digital creativity and storytelling can inspire real change. Today, we're diving into the intersection of entertainment, sports, and culture. From Hulu's iconic campaigns to live experiences at SoFi Stadium and groundbreaking partnerships with media powerhouses like Amazon, Disney, and Hulu. Joining me today is the lovely Kristen Paul, who has helped shape this space with work that blends creativity, strategy, and real-world impact.
Thank you for having me, Misha. I love what you're doing and the conversations that you're having.
Kristen, I appreciate that immensely. Thank you so much for being here. I know you've been working with some of the biggest names out there. Can you share a bit about your background and how you first started working on campaigns that connects these worlds?
I actually started my career being a fan first, going to school, being in a big college football team. That was really where sports took off. And then I naturally went to school for it and started in advertising and marketing. And then from there, really into brand building, then into tech, and now ultimately into sports. So I really started first out of college working with Zimmerman Advertising. Zimmerman was always known as a retail powerhouse, really driving ROI, return on investments, having partnerships and clients that really were rooted in kind of the bottom line, which was a great launching pad for me to really understand the business side of what drove a brand and how that really impacted sales and annual revenue. From Zimmerman, I moved on to Deutsch, which took me from Florida to California in the intersection in the beautiful city that is Los Angeles, really thrown into entertainment and brands that really would have a cultural impact and moment. So working for Deutsch LA out here, I had the opportunity to work on brands like Volkswagen, Hulu, Sprint Telecommunications, and more. And that's what I really understood, not only the business aspect that I initially had from Zimmerman, but also the cultural impact, and really started diving into entertainment in obviously the mecca that is Los Angeles. So every experience I've had has been able to build on the other. And that was a moment I realized just the power of mixing simplicity and humor and the cultural truths, is that I was just an avid fan myself with my experience.
I love that. I know you've been working at SoFi Stadium, and I would love for you to share more about that. Are there particular events at SoFi Stadium that you're really proud of and you want to share with our listeners today?
So I've been at SoFi now a little over a year. Many don't know that SoFi is a brand, a banking app, and also a stadium. So that's where my job kind of intersects, that we have amazing brand partnerships. We have a portfolio of over 35 partners that kind of keep a venue and a stadium like that running. For us, we have the unique opportunity that every year looks different. This past year, we had the likes of Beyoncé, Kendrick Lamar, Post Malone. Then we also had U.S. Women's National Team in soccer games. We had music festivals like Rolling Loud and Hard Summer. So we really ran the gamut of having a cultural kind of mecca in Inglewood, California, but with the demographics and audiences that really, truly span and change based on the event. One that I'm probably the most proud of is the launch of Beyoncé's Cowboy Carter tour. Her first stop was in Los Angeles. The tour had never launched before. So it was a lot of embargoes, a lot of crazy ideas that were thrown. She had stayed with us for 5 nights, completely sold out. And we launched what ended up being a cocktail drink based on the drink that she also promotes, which is Sir Davis whiskey mixed with a cowboy hat. It sounds so simple. You go to festivals, you go to events, you always get these signature drinks or these cups that you can bring home with you for the first time as a venue and a location. Similar to Disneyland, we did that as well. People just resonated with it, purchased it, took it home as souvenirs, posted about it all over social media, and it really genuinely kind of took off. So for the first time, I think in a while, we were able to mix not only having an artist here, but also how do we make that a cultural moment for us as well.
You and I have talked a lot about some campaigns that shaped and created cultural impact and really shifted culture. So I wanted to talk about Hulu has live sports that almost became a meme in itself. Can you share with us what the thinking was behind that campaign and what made it resonate so widely?
So Hulu that's going under a rebrand. This is pre-Disney. This is pre a lot of streaming other platforms that have popped up. So put yourself in 2018 and you don't know where Hulu is or what Hulu is. They were synonymous with next day television. You don't really think live sports, live television, anything like that. So our team was really tasked with exploring that narrative. And you think of something at that behemoth of a company that how do you distill what that cultural insight is? You knew no one really genuinely knew that Hulu had live sports, but how do you tell the world that? And I think us coming up with Hulu has live sports, a campaign that was just simple and self-aware was really interesting. It was the message, but it was also the punchline, right? We leaned into humor. We had athletes from NFL, the women's soccer team, NBA, really deliberate in a deadpan, matter-of-fact way that became quotable. People started changing their names on Instagram to Kristen has live sports. It was easy and repeatable. And I think we get so in the weeds because we are in these meetings. We know the business implications. We know what needs to change. When you start looking at athletes, celebrities, everyone out there starting to make jokes of themselves, I think that's when you know you've also really crossed into culture.
Exactly. And that is such a big topic on the show because we talk about how a lot of campaigns get judged on views and impressions, but it's really hard to measure the real cultural wins. How do you evaluate whether a campaign actually shaped conversations or behaviors?
Talked a lot about this at Amazon too, right? Amazon started as books. They were the marketing genius or leg, and I think they're still evolving and finding their identity and their voice in that. When we started noticing little viral takeoffs or moments, it was where the audience just started co-creating with us. And those are the ones you can't plan for, right? There's moments where you get a task room and you're saying, okay, we have to come up with an idea to respond. A perfect example is we worked on launching The Mandalorian. Right as we launched The Mandalorian, a lot of the characters in the show started taking off. So everybody wanted a Baby Yoda. And Baby Yoda just became this icon and this moment throughout. And sometimes you're catching up, but when you start taking a real pulse and that and understanding the sentiment of how your audience is picking up what you're putting out, I think that's when you know you've made a moment. It's really blatant to us in the industry for those that are trying to create a viral moment versus knowing that virality is coming and that's something that we should explore and support. Because then once we knew that moment was taking off, then we posted on social media, we addressed it, we talked about it, we changed our communications based on just how the audience reacted.
I love that. One of the ways we've been looking at social media for social impact in these series is what happens when we strip away the platforms and the partnerships. And you alluded to this earlier when you were talking about emotional storytelling and nostalgia. But what human emotions or stories do you think are at the heart of the campaigns that work best?
Every brand is so different. I've worked on brands that to the naked eye would seem not sexy. We work with a disabilities partner called Easter Seals, and they have amazing narratives around how to take a stadium and make it friendly to those that are impaired to sound or those that are shocked by loud noises. There's so many partnerships out there that I think the narrative gets lost and not understood because the brand might not be as sexy in the world as a Pepsi or an American Airlines or a Google, right? That's where I think the social change is coming in because people genuinely are rooted in positive outcomes. How can they help? And how are these changing conversations that have never been had before? While Hulu is that big name, nobody had a conversation that we were actually paying athletes to say whatever we wanted. So that transparency, and I think those moments that you are more open with your audience, that's where you start to really see change because they feel like they're invested and they're rooted in the message as well. So for us, it's really bringing you along. And we do that a lot on the Rams. Working as an NFL team, our mission is we partner with purpose. We don't partner with a partner just to partner. We partner because we know it's going to effectively change the community. It's going to change ourselves too.
That's so powerful. We know that many brands want to tie into social good, and I appreciate you bringing up the purpose element behind it. I am also curious if you have an example of a campaign that surprised you, maybe where the audience responded in a way you didn't expect, or social media helped amplify a campaign far beyond its original audience.
Ironically, at Amazon, we were launching a new movie. We were also talking about home deliveries, right? So boxes are coming out. There was a huge awareness that next day delivery was happening. But after next day delivery happens, what do you do with all these boxes? It's like an ongoing joke that you have all of this product and this waste potentially at your house. And so, in an effort to kind of debunk that, we paired it up with a Jurassic Park announcement. And we also did the largest unboxing Amazon box ever, which ironically ended up having a dinosaur in it. But it's also, as part of that, it was not only are these big boxes and these are big moments, but these are also ways that you need to reuse, reduce, and recycle and give back. So we made what I considered a flashy Hollywood moment. Also understand that as part of that, there's also the need and understanding from the audience that we're no longer part of the problem or how can we solve it together. We just started seeing people kind of take off, understanding you went to the movie and you also recycled, you got the free popcorn, you got those incentives. So that incentive for good, I think, can really be paired with every campaign that is launched out there.
And that's so unique because you essentially turned a potential problem into this opportunity to teach about sustainability and teach about ways to deal with unintended consequences in a way, and keeping the conversation honest and bringing your audiences along is so important because things are moving so rapidly as well. And I know you and I have talked a lot about moments and interactions where things don't go as planned. So, when you think about partnerships in terms of brands, platforms, and creators, what makes them work well versus fall flat?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's hard. You take a risk when you work with influencers and creators, right? Because you're in that moment. You have your brand standards. You know who you're looking for, and you really want to pair someone in the most authentic way. I think this generation and audience that we have now in market is very open and very understanding when they can tell it's just a sponsored brand partnership, right? Does that person actually use this product? Do they even care about this brand or are they just getting a paycheck? Which you can call a spade, but at the end of the day, you do hope that your values align with the people that you bring in to be a spokesperson or an advocate for your company. And I think that's where you have to understand that they are authentically choosing to work with you in the best possible way. And the biggest way we've done that is allow these creators to speak the way that they speak, the way that they want to share, the way that they want to engage. There were so many times we would give briefs and it'd be like, here's the copy for the social post. Here's what we want you to say in the video. And that's where you just knew immediately it just fell flat. And you have to know that when you're bringing on these partners, that you're in it, you're community, you're creating that conversation together and allowing them to speak to their audience the way that they do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And speaking about calling a spade, do you personally think brands have a responsibility to contribute to cultural conversations beyond selling their product?
I think they have a responsibility to understand what is happening in culture and how their product might be able to impact that or adjust it or do change for good, like we talk about. I don't know if every cultural moment a brand has to respond. And I think that's where I've seen some great instances and some use cases that were so natural, timely, quiet. I think of a Super Bowl game where the lights went off in the stadium and Oreos replied and was like, time for an Oreo break when the lights are off. And that was within 3 minutes. But you have to have a lot of trust within your company, a lot of trust within your creative and social teams to allow them to do that, because I've been in a lot of corporations where that trust isn't there and you just miss out. And if you're responding to a cultural moment 2, 3 days later, it's just not going to work. So that's where it kind of gets hard. And it's great when you're somewhat of a smaller company, but then you do see these examples from Wendy's on Twitter, X, and some other brands that really just run with it. And you have to establish who you are as a company to allow your team to either run with it, or do you have to go through 12 layers of approval to get there?
And that can be very challenging because I know you've worked with some of the biggest names in the industry. Could you talk to us about the collaboration you've had or the tie-in with MrBeast?
So we had a fun opportunity at Amazon as part of Prime Day. Everyone's heard of Prime Day, hopefully. And that's where, as a business, everything was really about all the deals and everything that was happening. We had a unique opportunity to really grow that audience and get those, what we call kind of gamers and those into gaming, interested as well. There's a lot of great deals out there around gaming systems and controllers, mouses, and desktops, and nobody really knew that. And MrBeast is the greatest kind of content creator in his space at the time. He's still obviously up there. And he approached us to really want to play one of his favorite video games around against one of his direct competitors. And we held that in Vegas during Prime Day live with teams on teams, and then ultimately with all the winnings on whichever team won, which ended up being MrBeast, but all of his winnings went to his nonprofit charity of choice. So that was a viral moment for us because that was live streaming on Twitch. That brought in a completely different audience. And it also allowed us to tell this audience, hey, we know you love gaming. We love gaming. We love MrBeast, but also it's Prime Day and you can get all these deals on some really great equipment so that you can have fun throughout the year. And he really brought a different spin on that conversation because that was an audience on YouTube, on social media that necessarily wasn't actively engaging on Amazon.com.
This is one of my favorite examples that you've shared in the past because I think it's so cool that you've worked with all these big brands and big influencers and creators. It's also interesting to hear that there was actually a social impact tie-in where there was a give back component of nonprofit of your choice. So I do appreciate that is being considered, and that's something we talk about a lot. And you mentioned something interesting. You were saying audiences that typically wouldn't be on the platform. So how do you think about designing campaigns that resonate across different generations? Gen Z on TikTok versus, for example, parents or older fans that are tuning in on TV.
Yeah. It really kind of comes back to, I think, the target demo. I've worked on campaigns. I think even that one specifically, like we knew the goal wasn't to go over and try and hit anyone over 26. It just wasn't there. And that's where coming together and having kind of teams and different avenues, you're trying to hit a different demographic. I know what works for me is not going to work for my mom or vice versa. And that's where that 360 approach is like really crucial. And it also would come down to your budget. And that is probably where we spent a lot of our conversations on the upfront and the strategy of some of these campaigns. Do we have enough to hit everyone? If we do, what does that look like? And if we don't, how can we get more niche and I would say segmented to each of these platforms and these audiences to make sure we're driving that home? In this instance, sometimes the talent helps drive where they're most active and they're most popular across certain platforms. But when you get in that intersection, especially what I'm dealing with now at the stadium, is what might work for Beyoncé is probably not going to work for a country concert. So, how do I shift my narrative and conversation based on the demographic that comes into the building? And that's an ever evolving struggle.
And it's interesting too, because I know that you wear a lot of different hats, and part of this is also you're constantly gathering analytics, A/B testing, making decisions that actually change the direction of a campaign. So, talk to us about data analytics and social listening. What type of tools or strategies do you use? Do you have someone on the team doing that? And how do you leave room for creativity when you have all this data at your disposal?
It can be overwhelming. I will say I've never had more data than when I was at Amazon. And that can be handcuffs at some times because you're also hopefully trying some net new things. And then at other times be immensely impactful. So I currently have teams across social, across digital, across surveys, across fan experiences, proprietary data we started rolling out is we can actually track people that engage at a physical on-site activation, brand activation by pinging cell phones in that area, which is very cool. We, a few years ago, could never have done that. So you think of takeovers at malls or at concerts or booths, people would not spend a lot of money from a brand side on that because you can never really quantify the reach. Now we're starting to look at those and creating dashboards accordingly. So when we start looking at some of the metrics, establishing that as a company as well is really important. Are we here for reach? Are we here for impressions? Are we here for eyeballs? Are we really here for transactions? And sign those up at the start. We actively execute a lot of dark posts, those across some of the key platforms. But because of that, I will say it's something we keep a pulse on, but you're going to drive yourself crazy if you do it every week. So we try to do it every few weeks. And then really for those first time evers, which I end up always being in a first time ever campaign world, let it run and see what you can change and do after. You've already got so far on your approvals, you've gotten so far on your commitments. Unless you can make some slight changes, whether that's copy or editing or changing CTAs throughout, it's really going to be what we call like kind of like that debrief postmortem conversation after, or what would we have done differently? And maybe it's just not the right campaign, or is there a way to evolve it? So it takes a team, which can be hard to understand exactly what you're looking for when you've never done it before.
And that brings me to a question I have for you. Is there a social media metric you think is underrated that we're not paying enough attention to?
For me, I know a lot of times partners, especially if we're either looking at net new partners or campaigns, everyone's impressions or 500 million earns media. I love engagement. I think engagement speaks volumes. On Instagram now, you can see when someone has shared it with a little arrow who has DM'd it to someone else. To me, that's like you're taking an active approach. You're not just commenting, you're not just throwing me a heart. You're actively sharing it with someone else and probably saying something about it. So for me, engagement, I would rather have 10 likes and 15 shares than really looking at that quantity that I feel like we were so held to in the first few years of these platforms.
Right, and we talk about these on the show. We call them the vanity metrics, so the superficial metrics that don't really give us much info about how our audience is connecting. And I love that you also mentioned the sharing for those of us back in the day studying marketing, reading and writing about word of mouth. It is the traditional word of mouth. It's just being done through digital platforms. So I think it's really powerful. But I also, at the same time, want to dive into how you personally navigate the pressure of these high visibility campaigns. Millions of people will see them. You're working with these massive influencers and celebrities. So, how do you go about dealing with the pressure day to day and doing the work the best that you can?
It's great, and it's crazy. It really comes down to me, to the people you work with and the level set. I make the joke that I could never be like a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon, because I want to tell myself is we are changing the minds and hearts of America and the world with some of this work that we put out. It's not going to end anything crazy, right? These are still moments that we get to interact with. We still want to have fun. Gen Z is interactive, short form. How do we keep attention? I remind myself, older fans like myself, we just want nostalgia and storytelling in that tradition. And we're making these traditions and these moments for future generations. And I think balancing that, what could be stressful, to me, I love my job. Every day doesn't feel like a job. It just feels like an idea to brainstorm, a way to be creative, a way to push the barriers. When a business has a win, like where a celebrity sells out a concert, it is so exciting to me that I know I had a part of that. And I really think that the emotion that we all seek in what we see in our phones and when we go home is the emotion that you bring to your job every day. It gives that sense of belonging and always asking the why. For me, the why is so massively important. And sometimes I've seen campaigns we launch and then we sit in the debrief and we're like, wait, why did we do this campaign? You really want to know in the beginning to ask these questions and really understand why you're doing it. And there's been multiple times we've been halfway through something and it's okay, this seemed like a good idea, but this isn't worth it. It's either not worth the struggle, the late nights, the investment, the legalities. And I think that took me a long time to be like, no, oh my God, we spent so much time. And it's okay to say you're wrong. It's okay to learn no matter what boardroom, what company, what executive you're talking to. We're all human, and that sometimes can get lost. And you see everyone at the festivals or the big conferences. And I genuinely believe that we're doing this for a reason, not just always for a dollar.
That's so powerful. When you say the why, it reminds me of Simon Sinek's book, To Start With Why. It's still a great read to this very day, just understanding the impact, understanding the purpose behind actions and decisions. And I love the fact that you full circle go back and reevaluate that, because there is a lot of pressure in high stakes environments like this. And as we're navigating this in schools, but also starting our first jobs, it's important to kind of build that skill set and know I'm going to be able to work under pressure, and just reminding ourselves, like you said, this is ultimately something that has to provide value, have purpose. So the fact that you have the ability to kind of go back and reevaluate that is really powerful, and also speaks to the organizations you've been a part of. Now, we're at this massive forefront of digital AI, and I always ask my guests about AI and how they feel it's impacting their day to day. What is your take on it?
It's been interesting. I think, especially in the marketing space, there's a lot of added benefits. I know from a leadership level across my organization, but also larger organizations, it's really driving efficiency in where time used to be spent, automating a lot of processes that hadn't been done before. One of our key partners is Google, and They are a leader in the space, and it's just so interesting and innovative to see what they're doing with Gemini, how we're evolving that to sports and our sports teams. We're getting more data and kind of directional insights than we ever have just from what's either on a jersey or on a team, and automating everything from finances to invoices to status calls. So I see the added benefit. I think there's still truly these live experiences, these moments that are going to be unmissable in person, right? So there's things that I know AI could never replace, but I do think it's making some organizations a lot leaner and smarter. Not a huge proponent of AI writing every one of my emails, but I do think there are systems in place that haven't been before, and I think it allows us to all be a little bit more creative and have spend less time on some of what we would call those ankle biter things that maybe you shouldn't be doing for 15 years, but you've been doing it and you have to submit an expense report or something crazy.
Yeah, we've already seen this big disruption in social media, and it's going to continue with Gen AI. I agree that the efficiency portion of it is huge, but also what I tell my clients and my students is that there's so many other skills that we need in order to succeed in this space. So, based on your experience, what skills should the next generation of digital marketers be mastering right now?
I oversee quite a large team, and I've got every kind of generation and age ranges in there, and it's very interesting. And I'm learning how to be a better leader every day. And that task is never done. I think it's constantly evolving. And some of the skills that really kind of stand out, and whether this has been passed down or I see it from those that I admire, is truly that always stay curious, always explore. We're not in the camp of checking boxes. Everyone's checked those boxes, and I think flattery is the best form of imitation, or however they say that, which is beautiful, but it's likely it's been done before. We've been doing now marketing and advertising truly, I'd say probably since the mid 40s and 50s, and everyone out there, you see the jokes that those shows and movies are just, do we really need a third version of that movie to come out again? Does Legally Blonde really have to come back to theaters? And how do we evolve ourselves and our thinking for things that haven't been done before, I think is massive. I think accountability is huge. Follow up, staying in touch. My rule of thumb is I never don't respond to an email, ideally within 24 hours, whether that's professionally. Personally, then my emails do slack, but professionally, I will always get back to someone in 24 hours. And I think that's what people just start to expect. You'll always be there, you're accountable, you are someone that they can lean on, because I think we're all navigating this at the same time. And to me, that's that true accountability and curiosity that's really important.
I love that. And really, this advice is applicable across industries, but definitely in our space where we're
Yeah.
managing people, we're communicating with so many different stakeholders, and we're creating and analyzing. And there's just so many different hats we wear. So I truly appreciate that. And if you were to bring back Golden Girls, I wouldn't object because I am a huge fan. So, Kristen, is there anything we didn't touch on today you want to share with our listeners?
I love this platform. I love, Misha, what you're doing and the conversations that you're having. When we strip away thinking of it of just as digital or just as social or just as a partnership, I go back to understanding the purpose, but also the why and what that purpose is that we're doing. And I think that gets lost a lot of times in these conversations of social media collapses any type of geography. A great moment that is happening in Los Angeles can be trending 10 minutes later in London. And I think the more that we are these natural explorers and we know what is happening, you create those moments and those campaigns that are really, that's your distribution network. That's how, that is, like you said, our word of mouth. And I think that's where you just don't know, even a simple branded visual can take off worldwide, right? This week I'm working on a partnership with a country. never done that in my life. That's insane. But what does that look like for a brand to partner with a country? And how do you have that moment resonate globally? And each stepping stone to each of these kind of career moments that I've had allows us to understand that it's more than just that moment that you're in, but how can I bring my audience in as well? And to me, that's where it's not just a fan base, but it's a fandom for hopefully your entire life and those touch points.
I love that. I can't wait to see your next campaign, and it sounds like a very exciting project. I've been following along your journey ever since we met back in the day in the classroom. So it's been fabulous to see you continue to thrive. So I really appreciate you being here, Kristen.
You too,
Just
Misha. Thank you for leading the charge. Thank you for having these conversations. They're vital. The more we have them, I think the more it makes us feel like we're just someone behind a computer working on a digital campaign, and we're not alone. Everyone's trying to do good. And I know sometimes, and even myself is like, how do I even start that?
I love that. And to all our listeners, thank you for listening to Social Media for Social Impact. Be sure to subscribe, share, and I'd love to hear your thoughts if today's episode left you thinking differently about the role of media in shaping culture. Thanks again, and until next time.